claims shows a level of sophistication that no one wasn't expecting. Foreign policy expert James Carafano is a senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation. He joins us now to explain. Thank you so much for joining us. You've been working pretty much around the clock. I've been watching your analysis as this continued to unfold. Really remarkable stuff. No one expected this to be signed this evening.
Yeah, and you know, we have to parse this a bit. If you just put the Korean experts in the room, they will tell you what's on that piece of paper is largely a nothing burger that we've seen before. And I wouldn't dispute that, but I think you have to put it in the context. If that piece of paper is on top of we remain committed to the pressure campaign, which protects our vital U.S. interests, the United States remains committed to the goal being the verifiable and irreversible elimination of North Korea's nuclear weapons, and we say this only gets wrapped up in a treaty process, then there's a lot under there that makes this different than what we've seen before, and I think
James,
that's the really important news.
Those are good points, because I brought this up just a short time ago with Todd Pyro. I was, scanning through this live on the air and trying to see if it says anything about sanctions, anything about all the elements that you just mentioned. None of that is included in this.
That's right. That's important. There is no compromise on sanctions. There is no agreement to reduce U.S. forces. There is no formal end to hostilities between the two powers. These are all things which would have been major concessions and compromises. So the United States hasn't compromised the things that protect us. The maximum pressure strategy of nuclear deterrence, missile defense, conventional deterrence with our South Korean and Japanese allies, and sanctions, not to get him to come to the table to negotiate, but sanctions to prevent him from building out his arsenal. There's no sign that the president's going to compromise on that. So as long as that safety net is in place and our goal remains fixed, and we only do this in a formal treaty where we're actually going to put down in black and white, we're okay here.
Yes, and a formal treaty being important because the Iran nuclear deal was not done in that way. That is what allowed President Trump to move forward and pull us out of it. But if it's a treaty, we cannot do that. Is that correct? The next president
well, we can always withdraw from a treaty, but it's not just that it's a more firm commitment, that in a treaty you spell everything out. So, for example, we say, what do we mean by the Korean Peninsula? Well, North Korea means, well, you can put a bomber on Guam and it can fly into Korea, so that's part of the Korean Peninsula. We're like, no, dude, it's like the nuclear weapons in North Korea. That stuff gets spelled out in black and white in a treaty, and that's really, really important when you're dealing with North Korea.
All right, so I want to ask about Putin. Is Putin next? What, if anything, from his North Korea negotiations could give President Trump an upper hand if he was to sit down with the Kremlin, which we've heard in the past weeks? They're asking for a sit down with President Trump.
Yeah, the short answer is no. And here's why, because unlike North Korea, Putin has to be willing to come and put something substantive on the table. And we've seen no sign that he's interested to do that. So that would literally just be a gab fest like the G7. Here are the big way markers, and we've already seen 2 of the 3, to see how this new national security team is working and how they're implementing the strategy that Trump put together in the first year of his presidency. The first was the Iran JCPOA decision, a very clear, firm decision and a clear strategy and a path forward. The second one was the North Korea meeting. Again, I think we've seen a very clear strategy and a path forward. The third is really the NATO summit, right?
Okay.
The G7, that's just a gab fest. Who cares? The NATO summit is where Trump needs to go in and cement his leadership on the way forward on transatlantic security. And then after those 3, we'll know what kind of team we have, and we know how the president's foreign policy is going to
And that's the thing, the word team that you're using there, because clearly a lot of work was done prior to this meeting to get us to this point by Secretary Pompeo, Bolton, a lot of people. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good being with you.
Nikki Haley as well, working on it. We're breaking right now. You are looking live in Singapore. We are awaiting President Trump. We will carry that live as soon as we see him approach the podium. Supposed to be